In this video, we're going to go ahead and build Kuwabara from Yu Yu Hakusho as a playable character in Dungeons & Dragons. But I wanted to focus in on the idea that he's essentially a meathead that uses a spirit sword and really focus in on that spirit sword idea and still make it a very good playable character. So let's go ahead and dive in. First things first, we gotta pick a race and we're gonna choose variant human. Kuwabara's a little different than most humans, so I think this is justifiable. This allows us to choose a skill right off the bat as well as a feat. The skill we're gonna choose is athletics because you're a bit of a meathead, it just kind of fits. But we're actually gonna save that feat for the end of this build. Then when it comes to a background, you do kind of move between the spirit realm and the normal human realm, and with that idea of going between realms fairly consistently, I'm going to think of that as you traveling between the astral and choose Wild Spacer. This is also majorly because you can take one heck of a beating, so making sure that you get the tough feat right away is really helpful because the Wild Spacer background does give us the tough feat, and that means we get an extra 2 hit points of health per level of this overall build. It also gives us 2 skill proficiencies. The first one's going to be in survival, and the second one we're going to choose, and we're going to go with Arcana because you are actually pretty sensitive to spirit energy. Then when it comes to the stats, we're going to have a point spread that looks like this. We're focusing mostly on physical stuff, but you are kind of overly confident in yourself, even if you're not actually charismatic. So we're going to boost up the charisma a little bit because of this, but not actually focus on any charismatic skills because you're not good at that. You're just kind of overly confident, or at least you pretend to be. Then before we dive into a starting class, because we will be doing a multi-class, if you like D&D related content, make sure to subscribe. It really helps this channel. It lets the magical algorithm know that you're interested in this type of content, and it makes it so you roll more nat 20s than if you weren't subscribed to this channel. Apparently. But as far as that starting class, I'm going to go ahead and start off with Barbarian. The idea here is that it's before you get access to your spirit sword, when you're just swinging around a practice sword stick thing, and this has a major benefit of having the most starting health out of any class in D&D, with a starting health pool of 12 plus your constitution modifier. This gives us proficiency in 2 skills, so we're going to grab intimidation and perception. It gives us access to all weapons and light and medium armor as well as shields, but we're not going to really worry about shields much. Then at first level of Barbarian, you get access to rage. So as a bonus action, you can activate a rage, which you can do a certain number of times per day. When you're in a rage, you can have advantage on all of your strength checks and strength saving throws. You have resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, and when you make a melee weapon attack with a weapon using your strength modifier, which is very important, you get bonus to the damage dealt with that weapon. The bonus increases as you level up in Barbarian, but right now it's currently a +2. Additionally, at first level of Barbarian, you get unarmored defense. So if you're not wearing any armor, you still have an armor class equal to 10 plus your dexterity modifier plus your constitution modifier. But just for sake of making sure we have a decent amount of AC in game, we'll probably be using our medium armor as much as possible. Then we're going to go ahead and take one more level in Barbarian for now. This gives us reckless attack. So as part of your attack action, you can choose to attack recklessly, giving you advantage on all of your attacks for the turn, but it does give all of your enemies advantage against you. Additionally, at second level of Barbarian, you get Danger Sense, and you are very aware and have high perception abilities. So this really fits, because Danger Sense gives you advantage on any dexterity saving throws in which you can kind of see what's going on and you know it's coming. Then instead of going with a third level in Barbarian, we're going to go ahead and do a multi-class right away. And there's a reason we wound up leaving 13 points into Charisma, because we're going to multi-class into Warlock. We wanted to make sure we have a Spirit Sword. And when you become a Warlock, you get an Otherworldly Patron right away, which is basically your subclass. So we're going to choose a Hexblade. This gives us 2 features, but only one of them really matters to us. The first one is Hex Warrior. Hex Warrior allows us to have access to medium armor and shields, which we already had. And whenever you finish a long rest, you can kind of tie yourself to a hex weapon. It has to be some sort of melee weapon that doesn't have the two-handed or heavy properties, and it allows you to use your charisma modifier for the attacks. But we don't really care about that because we're using strength, because otherwise we waste so much of being a barbarian. However, we can still use strength or dexterity if we want to. It's still a weapon that you can kind of summon into existence, meaning that you have a spirit sword right away, allowing you to upgrade that stick into a spirit sword, and that spirit sword deals magic damage, which is very important. But the feature we care about much more is Hexblade's Curse. This allows you to curse a target, giving a bunch of bonus damage, especially as you level up. So when you hit a cursed target, you wind up being able to deal bonus damage equal to your proficiency bonus. And your proficiency bonus automatically levels up no matter what class you're putting levels into. On top of that, when you're attacking a hex target, you crit on a 19 or a 20 instead of having to only crit on a 20. And if you defeat your enemy in battle, you wind up being able to regain some hit points. But the amount is only equal to your warlock level plus your charisma modifier, which we don't have a ton of charisma, so it's only going to be a little bit, but every little bit helps. Now, we are going to be taking a couple levels in Warlock to get a few more features that we need, but we do also get some spell casting being a Warlock. And very importantly, multi-classing with Barbarian and Warlock isn't usually advised, because if you have your Rage active as being a Barbarian, you're not supposed to cast any spells because that immediately deactivates your rage. You can't even concentrate on a spell while you're raging. So we have to be very careful with the spells that we choose. We'll grab a couple cantrips that you can use before you go into a rage, like Booming Blade for swinging that sword a little harder, Eldritch Blast to shoot out some of your sword in that Spirit Shard technique when your sword breaks into a bunch of pieces and you shoot it all out. And then there's even a point where you kind of use your Spirit Sword as more of like a whip instead, which you can do with the actual hex weapon, or you can go ahead and use Lightning Lure. There's only a few spells that you want to save for those emergency situations like Hellish Rebuke or Shield, or maybe even Expeditious Retreat, but the one that you can still use while being in rage is Armor of Agathis. This allows you to add some protective magical force around you, which seems semi-fitting, and it gives you 5 temporary hit points per level of spell slot used. And if any creature hits you while you have those temp HP, they take an amount of damage equal to 5 times the level of spell slot used as well. And we're going to be taking a couple more levels in Warlock, so we're going to at least get second level spells here. That means you can deal an extra 10 damage to anybody that hits you, and that might actually happen more than once, because you might be able to hang on to those hit points a little longer since you're going to be resistant to more types of damage being a barbarian. But I wanted to make sure our spellcasting wasn't completely going to waste being a barbarian and still making sure to have that active in battle. Then when you hit second level in Warlock, you get some Eldritch Invocations, which is just basically Warlocky stuff to enhance yourself. We'll take Devil's Sight for now because you are very aware of your surroundings, and this allows you to see in all forms of darkness. And then we'll save our other invocation for one more level, because at third level of Warlock, we get access to second level spells. So we'll grab the only other spell that we can still keep using without having to worry about concentration and stuff, which is just going to be Mirror Image. So it's much harder to hit you in the first place. So you can amp up your Mirror Image and your Armor of Agathis right away, and then immediately rage right afterwards, being really ready for battle. But more importantly, at third level, we get a Pact boon. And this is where we get to choose Pact of the Blade. So now we can still use our Hexblade stuff if we need to, but more importantly, we have Pact of the Blade, so we can summon a weapon into existence, and it can be pretty much any kind of melee weapon. We're automatically proficient with it, even though we would already be proficient with every type of melee weapon already, being a barbarian. And any damage we deal with that weapon is going to be magical. And the other invocation we're going to use to amp this up is Improved Pact Weapon, giving us an overall +1 to the weapon, meaning it applies to our accuracy and our damage. So now we get to add our proficiency bonus, which is now upgraded to a +3. We have our +1 from our Improved Pact Weapon, and we have our rage damage bonus. Not to mention, it's all magical damage, and it's all generally pretty good, but we want to make sure we amp our stuff up a little more, because we can now have a pact weapon that's basically anything, which is kind of helpful because we have very long spirit swords, which we can pretend is a great sword, or more often we're using something closer to like a long sword. And there's even times you use it more for pole vaulting, but I don't think we're going to be able to pull that one off with this particular build. But now we've grabbed enough from being a warlock. We got all of our boosts that we needed, and we now have a full-on spirit sword. So let's go ahead and jump back over to Barbarian. And at third level of Barbarian, we get to choose a Primal Path, which is a Barbarian subclass. And this might not fit for overall concept because it's much more about religion, but the actual features fit perfectly for Kuwabara, and that's going to be a Zealot Barbarian. This gives us the feature Divine Fury. And that weapon that we're using mostly just deals magical damage, just generic magical slashing or piercing or whatever the weapon type is. But it is a very shiny sword that feels kind of like radiant damage, and that's what we can do with this feature. Divine Fury makes it so the first time you hit a creature on your turn, you can deal additional radiant damage. It can also be necrotic damage, but it feels more like Kuwabara would deal radiant damage. And that extra damage equals 1d6 plus half of your barbarian level, meaning you're getting a lot of boost to your damage even though you don't even have extra attack yet. And most of them are a flat boost. Like, you don't have to roll dice for this. This is just flat out damage. You don't have to worry about bad rolls. It's just going to be consistent damage being dealt. Additionally, at 3rd level, you get Warrior of the Gods. So if you do wind up falling unconscious because of taking too much damage in battle, somebody can help raise you from the dead, and they can do so more easily because it won't cost them any sort of material components anymore. Then at 4th level of Barbarian, you get an ability score improvement. So let's go ahead and boost up our strength by 2 points because that's most of what we're using for all of our attacking, and you worry more about attacking than anything else. Then at 5th level of Barbarian, we get a huge boost to our damage output because we finally get extra attack, and we get to apply all of those boosts except for our Divine Fury to every one of the attacks that we're going to deal. We also get the feature Fast Movement, so now we can increase our movement speed by 10 feet as long as we're not wearing heavy armor. Then at 6th level of Barbarian, once per rage you can use Fanatical Focus. So if you fail a saving throw, you can re-roll it. And it should be worth noting that your proficiency bonus boosts to a +4, which is really going to affect that Hexblade's curse. Then at 7th level of Barbarian, you get Feral Instinct, so you get advantage on your initiative checks, and you can't really be surprised anymore, which again ties into your pretty good perception of spiritual energy. Then at 8th level of Barbarian, you get another ability score improvement, so let's go ahead and max out that strength. Then at 9th level of Barbarian, you get Brutal Critical, so now you can roll 1 additional damage dice when you do a critical hit. And if you have your Hexblade's curse active, you can crit twice as easily because you have twice the crit range. Also, when you hit 13th level in Barbarian, you get to roll 2 additional dice. Then at 10th level of Barbarian, you get another feature from being a zealot called Zealous Presence, allowing you to shout out just like Kuwabara probably would do, which you can activate as a bonus action, and it allows you and up to 10 nearby friends to have advantage on attack rolls and saving throws, but it only lasts until the start of your next turn, and you can only do this once per long rest. Then at 11th level of Barbarian, you get Relentless Rage. So if you drop to 0 hit points, you can make a Constitution saving throw with a difficulty of 10. And if you beat that saving throw, you wind up being able to drop to just 1 hit point instead. Each time you use this, the difficulty increases by 5 points and resets back to 10 once you finish a short or long rest. Then at 12th level of Barbarian, you get another ability score improvement. So let's go ahead and boost up our Constitution. At 13th level, you get that boost to your Brutal Critical. And then at 14th level, you get another feature from being a Zealot called Rage Beyond Death. So even if you wind up failing on that Constitution check to not drop to 0 hit points, and you still wind up at 0 hit points, you can keep on fighting. You have to still make death saving throws, but you can fight through death. And even if you fail on those death saving throws, and meaning you would die, you can still keep fighting because you get to keep fighting until your rage ends. And that's only driven home further with the idea that somebody else can raise you from the dead with very little cost. And it's even driven further by what you get at the next level, which is Persistent Rage. So now you don't end your rage unless you choose to, meaning you can keep on fighting forever. Then at 16th level of Barbarian, you wind up getting your last ability score improvement from being a Barbarian, and we're going to throw that into Constitution. So we get a bit more health and armor class if you're not wearing armor. And then instead of taking 17th level in Barbarian, we're going to jump back over to Warlock because taking 1 more level there means we get 1 more ability score improvement, and I wanted to go ahead and boost up our dexterity by 2 points because that helps our armor class to a decent degree, because that means that we will max out any medium armor we would wear. But that does bring us to 20th level overall with 4 levels in Warlock and 16 levels in Barbarian. We can swing a Spirit Sword very, very well, and with our Mirror Image and our Armor of Agathis active, we are very defensively prepared, on top of having Rage active, giving us more resistance to damage. Then we can deal a bunch of damage with our Hexblade's Curse, giving us +6 to every attack that we're dealing as far as damage goes. We get another +1 thanks to our improved pack weapon. We get another +8 plus 1d6 on the first attack thanks to our Zealot Barbarian, and then we get another +4 to all of our attacks thanks to being in rage at such a high level of Barbarian, which is a lot of flat damage bonuses and one more additional dice on the first roll. It's just plenty of boosted damage for a Barbarian, and I love the fact that it's still using a Spirit Sword. But we still have that feat that we never wound up distributing right from the beginning of this build. And there's technically 3 decent options, and it depends on what size Spirit Sword you want to use. So if you want a massive Spirit Sword, I highly recommend going with a Great Weapon Master. This gives us a flat +10 to all of our attacks damage, which really boosts it up to an absolutely stupidly high degree, because between our ability score modifier and all the other boosts, that is a +26 to all of our attacks damage on every attack, and then an additional +1d6 and +8 on the first attack that hits thanks to being a Zealot Barbarian. And if any attack crits or takes out an enemy, we can go ahead and get one more attack as a bonus action, bringing us to a pretty staggeringly high amount of damage for a Barbarian. If you want to go a little more simplistic and just have a one-handed weapon, you can go ahead and take the Fighting Initiate feat to get a fighting style and get Dueling, giving you another +2 to any attacks damage if you're just using something like a longsword. But if you also want to guarantee that you're dealing additional damage every single turn with a bonus action, you can wind up still having a second Spirit Sword thanks to your Hex Warrior feature from being a Hex Blade, still using Strength for that modifier, but you're kind of going to be stuck with 2 short swords because you're still going to want to use your feat to take the Fighting Initiate feat and get 2 weapon fighting, allowing you to add your Strength modifier to that offhand attack. Overall, we have a bunch of great options. Personally, for the character sheet that I'm going to go ahead and put up on Patreon, I'm going to go ahead and go with Great Weapon Master because the obscene amount of damage is just too hard to pass up. Let me know what you think about this build in the comments down below. If you think it really fits Kuwabara, or if you think I'm missing anything very, very important, let me know. I love Yu Yu Hakusho. I really grew up on it, and it's kind of one of my OG favorites. But if you want access to the character sheet for this build or any of my other builds, feel free to check out my Patreon, linked in the description down below. We can be just as awesome as some of these people scrolling on by. They really help the channel. They overall just help this channel survive, and I cannot thank them enough. Especially my player character patrons: Wraith Lord, Nicole Biliak, Alone, The Holy 999s, Christopher Sam, Stark of Skies, Barrow Skrull, Zach, Felix Ulick, The One 0586, Kevin Shirley, Zephyros, That Funny Man 57, Joshua Maynard, CGC 2014, Panda Milkshake, Ted Z, Andrew Nobles, Karkat Kitsune, Decker Joint, Z13, Viral Naravar, Daniel Galvin, and the Dino 21. Then there's the folks that I play D&D with, my Dungeon Master level patrons: Silas Suchiya, 696, T Brownie, Julia B. De Oliveira, Just Wolf, Shane Gilroy, Daniel Saffler, Command ZX, and Salvador. Then there's my God tier level patron who goes above and beyond anything I ever expected, and that's GameSteak. So a very special thank you to him. And if you made it all the way to the end of this video, let me know by hitting that like button. And I'll be here hoping to roll at least 3 nat 20s in your next D&D session, especially if you want to be a bit of a meathead that uses a Spirit Sword playing as Kuwabara from Yu Yu Hakusho in Dungeons & Dragons.